We're skipping by chapter 6 in the book of Esther, but that is a significant chapter because the king can't sleep, and because he can't sleep, he gives orders to have the book of records or the annals brought and read to him. Have you ever had a child who couldn't sleep, so you go in and you like read a book to a child? Well, basically that's what happens. The king can't sleep, so he says, Go bring me the records and read to me about my kingdom and about my reign. And he hears about, in reading, how Mordecai had actually warned the king about an assassination attempt that two men were plotting and saved the king's life. And Mordecai said, gee, he asked Haman, what should be done to honor someone who has honored the king? And Haman, thinking that he's talking about himself, says, oh, well, give him robes that you've worn and a horse and parade him around and say, this is what we do to someone who honors the king. And Haman's total face drops when the king says, great, go do everything you've said for Mordecai the Jew. And Haman knows now he's in trouble. And then he gets invited to the banquet with the king and with Queen Esther in chapter 7. And on the second day, as they're drinking wine, and again the king says to Esther, what is your petition, Queen Esther? It shall be granted you. What is your request? Even to half of my kingdom, it shall be fulfilled. And our verse for the day in chapter 7, verse 3, then Queen Esther answered, if I have won your favor, O king, and if it pleases the king, let my life be given to me. That is my petition, and the lives of my people. That is my request. And she goes on to say how that she and her people have been sold to be destroyed, to be killed, to be annihilated. And she communicates it from the perspective of, and what a tremendous loss this is for the king and for his kingdom. It'd be one thing if we were to be sold as slaves, because that would at least gain income for the kingdom. But they're just to be killed and annihilated. And he asked, who is the foe? Who is the enemy who would do this? And that's when she tells him, it's Haman. And the king is so mad, he storms out and goes into the palace garden. And Haman, knowing he's in deep, deep trouble, goes to Esther to beg for his life. And when the king comes back in, he sees Haman basically looking like he's assaulting Queen Esther. And that is the end for him. And one of the eunuchs suggests, well, you know what? There's a huge gallows that he constructed for Mordecai, and the king says, let him be hung upon it. So this is basically the main climax of the book of Esther, that her courage and her faithfulness pay off. She and her people are saved, and the enemy, the architect of the plan to annihilate the Jews, Haman, dies on the very gallows he had constructed for someone else. It's interesting how often in history and in life, eventually, someone's evil plans for someone else can end up being the cause of their own demise.